In 1978, a man walked into a Synanon facility expecting treatment. He walked out with a rattlesnake in his mailbox. The snake had no fangs, they'd been removed, a professional touch. But the message was unmistakable. Stop talking about what you've seen inside these walls, or next time we won't be so careful. I've read the court documents myself. The venom sac was still intact. That's not medical treatment. That's terrorism dressed up in a rehabilitation uniform. But we need to rewind. Synanon didn't start as a cult. In 1958, in Santa Monica, California, a man named Charles Dederich opened a small storefront. He was a former insurance salesman, recovering from alcoholism himself. The idea was simple: create a place where addicts could live together, support each other, and rebuild their lives away from the streets. For the first decade, it actually worked. Synanon's methods, brutal honesty in group sessions, peer accountability, structured discipline, were unconventional, but they got results. Addicts stayed clean, families reunited, the media noticed. By the mid-1960s, Synanon was being called a miracle. Dederich was featured in national magazines. Celebrities donated money. The organization expanded from one building to a sprawling compound. Then something shifted. Around 1968, Dederich began to believe that Synanon wasn't just a rehab program, it was a new way of living, a better way. He started requiring members to undergo vasectomies and forced divorces to break family attachments. He demanded that residents shave their heads. Work hours stretched to 18 per day. Dederich wasn't a therapist. He had no medical credentials. But he began to style himself as a spiritual leader, a guru who'd discovered the secret to human transformation. He called the process the game. It was group confrontation taken to its logical extreme. Members would sit in circles and verbally assault each other for hours. Humiliation was the point. But Dederich's control wasn't limited to psychology. By the early 1970s, Synanon had become a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Members worked for the organization without pay. Their labor, manufacturing, construction, agriculture, generated enormous revenue, but no one left. Dederich had made it clear. Departing members would be hunted down, harassed, sued into bankruptcy. He called defectors splitters. The word became a curse. Dederich instructed followers that splitters were enemies of the organization, obstacles to be removed. He created an internal security force. They weren't called that, of course. But former members I've interviewed described armed men following them, photographing their movements, threatening their families. In 1977, Dederich issued what insiders called the Imperial Edict. He declared that Synanon was now at war with the world. The organization would do whatever was necessary to survive and expand. Violence became doctrine, not suggested, required. That's when the violence began. In November 1978, a man named Lance Kenton, Dederich's own son, tried to leave. He was beaten so severely he lost sight in one eye. The attackers wore motorcycle helmets so they couldn't be identified. No one was prosecuted. Synanon's lawyers intervened. Days later came the rattlesnake. A lawyer named Paul Morantz had begun investigating Synanon. He'd filed lawsuits on behalf of former members. On November 10th, he reached into his mailbox at his home in Los Angeles. That's when he found it, a 4-foot diamondback, coiled and ready. His hand was inches from its head. Morantz didn't die, but Synanon's message was delivered. The snake was traced back to a Synanon facility. 2 members, a man and a woman, were eventually arrested. In court, they claimed they'd acted alone. They claimed Dederich had no knowledge. The jury didn't believe them. But the damage to Synanon's reputation had already begun. Federal investigators moved in. The IRS audited Synanon's finances. The FBI investigated the violence. What they found was staggering: a network of assaults, threats, and illegal weapons caches. Dederich had stockpiled guns and explosives. He prepared for armed confrontation with the government itself. By 1989, Synanon's legal position was collapsing. Dederich was indicted, but he'd already suffered a stroke. He was in declining health, his mind fragmenting. He pleaded no contest to charges related to the rattlesnake incident and other crimes. He was sentenced to 5 years probation. He never spent a day in prison. Synanon continued for years after that, but it was finished. Members fled, lawsuits multiplied. The compound was eventually sold. Dederich died in 1997, still insisting he'd been misunderstood, that Synanon was noble, that he'd been a visionary. What started as a genuine attempt to save lives became a blueprint for control. Dederich had discovered something terrifying: that isolation, exhaustion, and ideological certainty could transform ordinary people into enforcers of cruelty. The addicts who walked through those doors looking for salvation found themselves enslaved. Synanon's story teaches us something uncomfortable, that the line between therapy and control is thinner than we'd like to believe, that charisma and conviction can mask exploitation, and that systems designed to heal can become weapons in the hands of someone who believes they are always right. The survivors are still processing what happened to them. Some spent decades inside those walls. They lost years, relationships, money. They were told they were being saved. They were being consumed. The rattlesnake in Paul Morantz's mailbox remains one of the most chilling symbols of cult violence in American history, not because it killed anyone, but because it almost did. Subscribe for the next untold story of how ideology becomes violence. We release a new investigation every week.